Good day, everyone. Today we are diving deep into the heart of cloud computing, where the power of Azure meets the magic of data migration. If you have ever wondered how to seamlessly transition your on-premise databases to the cloud, you are in the right place. In this video, we are unlocking the secrets behind transforming your traditional databases into dynamic, scalable, and secure Azure SQL Managed Instances. Get ready to embark on a journey where we demystify the entire process step by step, from setting up Azure Data Studio, harnessing the might of Azure database migration services to post-migration optimization. We have got it all covered. Whether you are an IT pro, a developer, or just a curious tech enthusiast, this video is your getaway to a world where databases seamlessly transition from on-premises to the cloud. So buckle up, hit the subscribe button, and let's explore the future of database management together. Let's jump right into the fascinating universe of Azure SQL Managed Instance migrations using Azure Data Studio and Azure Database Migration Services. I'll be migrating FinanceDB, which is hosted on an SQL Server 2022 on-premise database server, to an Azure SQL Managed Instance. This managed instance is a general purpose managed instance. So I'll be moving this database. I'll basically be migrating it from on-premise to Azure SQL Managed Instance using Azure Data Studio. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take say one full database backup and then one transaction log backup to Azure Blob Storage. And once the backup is completed, what I'll do is I will open the Azure Data Studio, and then I will show you guys how do we go about doing the migration. Yeah. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize backup to URL. We can do it in using TSQL, but there will be times for beginners who will not understand how to utilize SAS token and things like that. So just to show that, I'm using the GUI for this particular demo. Yep. So I'm going to click on add here and then click on new. So you need to sign into your Azure account and then select appropriate storage account, and then select your appropriate container, and then just leave the value default, or if you want to change the SAS policy expiration, then you need to change the date here. In my case, I will leave the default value, which is going to be from 1 year from now. So since it is a demo, after the demo I'll be dropping it, but in your case you can select an appropriate date. And I just clicked on this create credential, and then I got the credentials here. Yep. Now you need to click on OK, and then OK again. So if you see here, we will be backing up this database with the name of FinanceDB underscore backup, and it's the today's date. Yeah. So let's click on OK here, and the backup will be performed onto that particular Azure storage account. Yeah. So the backup is completed. So now what we'll do is we'll take an transaction log backup as well. Yeah. So backup, and then use transaction log, and then click on add, and then let's do the same thing here. So I've selected the appropriate subscription after signing in, provided appropriate storage account, blob container, and then also clicked on create credentials, and then I'm going to click on OK here. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the name here from FinanceDB backup, this one 1254. I'm going to change the BAK to TRN, and then click on OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to script it out onto my query window, so that I will be utilizing it further. Yeah. So if you see here, so this is the backup command here. So now what I'll do is I will change the stats to maybe 1 and then start it. and then wait for the backup to complete. So the transaction log backup is completed. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the portal and then look at that particular storage account. And if you see here, this is the storage account DB archival SAS, and then the container is MI migration. So let's click on refresh. And then if you see here, we are able to see that we have a full database backup and the transaction log backup. Yep. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to head on to Azure Data Studio, and then I'm going to first install the required extension. So in my case, I've already installed the extension Azure SQL Migration. You need to understand, like, you need to be on the latest version. In my case, I'm using 1.46.0. So this demo basically works on this one. So Azure SQL Migration extension needs here. So you basically have to search for that Azure SQL migration, and then you will find it in marketplace, and then you just need to click on install. As easy as that. Yep. So once that is done, you need to head back to this connections here. You need to add your on-premise server connection here. You just need to click on this, and then you need to basically provide the required information. So in my case, I'm using SQL login. You can utilize either SQL login, Windows authentication, or Azure Active Directory. And also, as far as encrypt is concerned, I've selected optional files. Yeah. So depending upon your requirement, you can select the things and then click on connect, and you will see it added here. Let me click on this one, and then I'll be able to resolve it. So it is done now. So if I look at the list of database here, I have Finance DB and JBDB. So for this video, I'm just going to migrate Finance DB. So what I'm going to do, right click on this instance, click on manage. Then as soon as I clicked on manage, I'll be able to see this particular tab, and I will click on Azure SQL migration and then click on migrate to Azure SQL. Yep. So now what I'll do is, like, I will just select Finance DB. If you want, you can select all the DBs there and then go for an assessment. But in my case, I'm just going to do a migration of this Finance DB. So I'm going to select just that and click on next. It's going to take some time depending upon the size of the database and number of database that you have selected. The timing might vary, but in my case, it should be done by, say, 30 seconds or something. Yeah? So the important thing here is, like, we are just assessing this and then seeing, like, what is the possible migration path I have. In my case, what I'm seeing is, like, I will be able to successfully migrate to managed instance, IaaS virtual machine, and Azure SQL database. So in my case, I'm going to do the migration to managed instance because I've provisioned it already. So I'm going to select it. You have an option to get the required Azure recommendation, like you collect the required performance data, and then you mention the location where you have collected it, and then when you start the analysis, what this particular tool can do is, like, it can look at the data and then provide you recommendation as far as the target mission is concerned. Basically, for example, you are not sure, like, what is that you want to migrate to. The thing is, like, you know that it's going to be managed instance or Azure SQL database, but the amount of resource that you require on these things, then you can utilize this particular option. In my case, I'm not going to do it. I've decided I will be going to managed instance, so I'm not going to do this. Here, what I'm going to do is, like, I'm going to click on this one and then see if there are any issues. I know there are no issues, so I'm going to just click on select here and then click on next. So you need to basically link your account to an appropriate account, and then you need to select your area tenant, and then the required subscription, and then the location where your managed instance is present, and then you will have to basically click on next. So either you can click on link account here and then sign into your Azure account, or you can click on this profile and then do it well even before starting any of these activities. Either way you can do it. So now I've selected appropriate resources. I'm going to click on next. Here I'm going to first do an online migration, okay? And the option that I've selected here is my database backups are in Azure Blob storage containers. We know that because we have taken the required backup. Okay, so in order to do the migration, you need to have a Azure database migration service in place. So for that, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to select the required database management service, which if it is already there. But in my case, I don't have one. I just want to show you guys like how you can do it from Azure Data Studio. So what I'll do now is like I will create it from here. I've selected appropriate resource group, and then I have named my Azure Database Migration Service as MIADMS. Yeah, let's click on create. Now, what I'm seeing is like I'm basically getting an error. It's a simple error, but I just want to show you guys so that in case if you guys receive it, you will be able to solve it. It basically tells like namespace Microsoft or data migration is not registered. Yeah, so this is the error that we are getting. So let's head to our Azure portal and then let's register this namespace. Okay, so what I've done is like I've opened the Azure portal, got into subscriptions, and then in that subscriptions, I've selected my subscription, and then you need to go to resource providers. Yeah. Now, if you compare the name there, it is basically Microsoft data migration. So let's search for data migration. So here it is. Just click on it and then click on register here. The registration has started. So let's wait for it to complete and we will uh, so the registration is completed. If you see here, it is registered now. So what we'll do now, we will head back to the Azure Data Studio and then let's click on create here. So if you see here, this time it created without any issue. So let's click on done. And then here you can see the resource group and then the Azure Data Migration Service getting populated automatically. Now let's click on next. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to select appropriate details here. So if you see here, the source database name is FinanceDB, target database name is FinanceDB. Resource group is this one. I've selected the storage account where I have taken the backup and also the container. So let's click on next. Okay, if you see here, we are going to perform an online migration. So I'll let you guys know what is an online migration. So what happens is like, let's consider you have a production database which doesn't have much of a downtime. Yeah. So what you can do is like, you can basically take a backup of that particular database and then place it on the Azure storage and then all other transaction log backup as well, and then move it across to the Azure blob storage, and then you can start the online migration, and then it will be performing it, and any new transaction log backups that goes into the blob storage will also be picked up by this migration agent, and then it will basically perform the restoration on the destination database server, that is your managed instance. So in our case, so what we can do is like without affecting your existing production server, you can take a backup and restore it. And when you have a downtime for the cutoff process, what you can do is like you can take a final transaction log backup and move it across to the blob storage, and then you can do the cutover. So let's consider the database that you're going to migrate is so huge, and in case if you take a downtime, then perform a full backup, then a differential backup, and then a transaction log backup, and then restore it on to managed instance, there is high possibility you will have to give several hours for the downtime. But if you follow this online migration, what you can do is like before the actual cutover, you can restore the required backups onto the destination managed instance, and then just wait for the cutover time, say 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then take a final transaction log backup, and then you can perform the restore and then do the cutover. And that way, what will happen is like you will be able to minimize the downtime to a greater extent. Now let's click on Start Migration here. So if you see here, just scroll down, and then if you can see here, you're able to see that the Azure Database Migration Service basically shows the migration status. So in my case, I can see that the database migration in progress. So let's click on that. And then you can see that the database is getting restored. Let's head on to our managed instance and then try a refresh here and see if we are able to see something there. Yeah, if you can see here, the data finance DB database is getting restored. Yeah, let's head back to our data studio and then do a refresh. So let's wait for it to complete. It will basically be waiting for us to waiting for the restore to be completed. Once that is done, I think we will be able to do the cutover. Okay, so the restore is completed, and then if I look at the migration status, it is basically telling like ready for cutover. Yep. So now let's click on this database here. And then if you see here, it is telling like the migration status as ready for cutover. So once we are done with restoring the database, you just need to click on this complete cutover. Yeah, before that, what we'll see is like we will see like what are the databases that were restored. So if you can see here, we are able to see that the full database backup is restored, and then the transaction log backup is also restored. Yeah, so that is what we are seeing. So now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to take another transaction log backup. Yep. And then I'm going to do it as the final cutover. So now let's consider the previous operation, that is restoring the full database backup, and then the transaction log backup was done well before. And now you advise your application team, your business that you are going to do a final cutover and stop all the connections to your database on the actual production, that is on-premise server. And once you get a confirmation from everyone, you will look at the database if there are any connections. Once you are sure, what you can do is like you can take a final backup here. Yeah. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to change this backup to backup name to say final backup. So this way I know which is the backup that I'm talking about. So I've replaced it, and now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to take the backup here. Once this transaction log backup completes, I will go back to my Azure Data Studio, and then I will do a refresh here and then see if that final backup is restored or not. Yeah, it's refreshed now. So I'm waiting for it. Let's give it some more time, and then we will complete the cutover once the final backup is also restored. Cool. So if you can see here, the final backup is also restored. So if you have looked at the video, I've not done anything manually here. So the initial restore completed as soon as the backup came into the Azure Blob storage. When I took the final backup, the migration service sensed that, and then it performed the restore automatically. So now that I've restored the final backup, what I'm going to do is like I'm just going to click on this complete cutover, and what it basically tells is like perform the following steps before you complete the cutover. Stop all incoming transactions to the source database, create a final transaction log or differential or backup and store it in the Azure Blob storage. Verify that all backups have been restored on the target. So we have done all these things. So now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to click on this. I can confirm there are no additional log backups to provide and want to complete the cutover. Yeah, so I'm just going to click on this complete cutover. So I'm getting a message cutover in progress. So let's wait for it to complete and then we'll take it from there. So I just clicked on refresh and then I can see that the migration status is completing. So it should change to completed. So let's wait for it for some more time. Let's give it some more time. Okay, so the migration is completed. I'm able to see succeeded here. So now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to go back. So now that it is completed, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to click on this migrations, and then if I click on refresh, there is nothing here. So now let's go to the dashboard and then let's click on a refresh here, and then if you can see here, it basically tells like database migrations completed. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to head back to my SSMS and then we are able to see that the database is in restoring state. So let's click on refresh here, and then if you see here, the database is online now. Yeah, so let's check the tables that we have inside. And then if you can see here, we have some data inside. Yep. So now let's check if we have data there. It's basically a backup and restore. So anything that is present on the source should be there in the destination. Yeah. So everything looks good. And then let's refresh our on-premise server as well. And then we can see that the database is online there. So now you can either change it to maybe remove it, take a final backup and remove it. But yeah, this is how we do an online migration from on-premise to Azure SQL Managed Instance. There are so many other things like you need to move other things that are required for this database, like your logins, the agent jobs, and you have any other things related to this particular database, you will have to move it. But the major thing would be to move the database, and that we have done. So as far as the Azure Data Studio is concerned, you have an option to do a login migration as well. We will look into that as a separate video, but as of now for this video, we have just completed the migration from on-premise to Azure SQL Managed Instance. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Jai Hind.